Ratchet& Clank Going Commando is the sequel to the first Ratchet& Clank game released back in 2002, and being the sequel and the follow-up game, it had a lot of expectations and a lot of pressure on its shoulders. So did it meet the pressure and expectations, or did it fall under the pressure? Well, Ratchet& Clank 2 is an amazing game that exceeded all the expectations that was placed on it. The game opens up with Ratchet & Clank being interviewed from behind the heroes. Here, we hear Ratchet's new voice actor.
We're still pretty busy, but in a more, domestic sense.
Yesterday, I flushed out my radiator core.
Ratchet is bored because there's no action going on right now, so when the CEO of Megacorp comes around asking Ratchet's help to relive the glory days, Ratchet accepts the offer without a second thought. To relive all the glory days, and the days that were anything but glory in retrospect, days that were filled with hardships and Ratchet having to aside his differences with Clank. The first few missions of the game, you will only play as Ratchet, and this is done because the player needs to get used to all the new controls and movement mechanics Insomniac has done for Ratchet in the second game. When holding down L2 or R2, Ratchet can now strafe around his enemies to literally go in circles. His inability to do that in the first game was one of the things I hated because the dodge mechanics and the movement mechanics didn't work out in the player's favor at all. And so Insomniac has decided to polish out all these bugs and problems with the second game in the movement, and this helps the combat feel so much more satisfying and so much better compared to the first game. Now let's move on to the story. The CEO of Megacorp is working on an experiment called the Protopet, and the Protopet is unfortunately stolen by a hooded mysterious figure, so Ratchet must suit up again and find this figure while Clank works for Megacorp. Clank though is unfortunately kidnapped by the hooded figure, so Ratchet goes to save him where he encounters him the first time, who pushes him down the stairs. Ratchet and Clank soon defeat the hooded figure and find out that she is in fact another Lombax the same race as Ratchet. She then tells him that they have made a huge mistake by giving the Protopet back to the CEO of Megacorp named Mr. Fizzwidget, and she tells him that Megacorp is secretly a very evil and a very greedy company. So for the rest of the game, Ratchet, Clank, and Angela are all planning on stopping the Megacorp Corporation. They storm their secret base before they are disturbed by an infobot who tries to warn them about something. Soon after, the infobot gets disturbed once again by the CEO, Mr. Fizzwidget, who reveals to be Captain Quark. Captain Quark mainly did all this so he can get his fame popularity back after the first game when he got defeated by Ratchet and Clank. Ratchet and Clank of course beat Quark's evil plans by defeating the Protopet, and where Angelica later finds the real Mr. Fizzwidget, the real CEO of Megacorp, to be locked up in a cupboard somewhere by Captain Quark. They all resume their normal, ordinary lives, and Ratchet and Clank do the same, and everybody lives happily ever after. The end. Ratchet and Clank may be one of my favorite games of all time, but I'm not just going to say that it's a perfect game, because there are many issues that many players might experience when playing this game. I of course played the game on the HD collection, so I've experienced a few more bugs than the people who played the original PS2 version, but I won't count those against the game in this review because this is only the HD collection's fault, not the main game's fault. But there are still glitches that people experience in the PS2 version, which I am going to be talking about. But there's a problem with the main difficulty of the game. The second game is a lot more difficult in comparison to the first game, and this is because Insomniac put a lot more focus on the shooting and the combat parts of the Ratchet and Clank games, except the platforming parts. Ratchet and Clank 1 was mainly a platformer with shooting elements, while Ratchet and Clank 2 is a third-person shooter game with platforming. And this really creates a divide between the Ratchet and Clank community, between the people who like strategic tactics and battling like that versus people who like this game where you just go guns and blazing into every mission. I personally like the second games more than the first game, but I can see why some people might be disappointed with the second game and how it introduces combat and platforming to the series. And Ratchet and Clank is mainly just a platformer with shooting elements, and that is what it's supposed to be. And that's what all the developers have said it always has been. So I can see why people may be a bit disappointed with this title. So now let's move on to the actual weapons section of the review. The weapons in this game are given to you by the company Megacorp, and they do almost everything the complete opposite of Gadgetron from the first game. Take something like the Pyrocitor and compare it to the lava gun from this game. I think you can see the difference. The guns in the first game were made to be more usage for more usage, while the guns in the second game are stylistic and made for use. Gadgetron weapons are so useless compared to the Megacorp weapons that Gadgetron in fact almost went completely bankrupt in the second game. In one of the missions you can see an old Gadgetron factory, and the lady that works there tells Ratchet that basically nobody buys Gadgetron weapons anymore, which is kind of sad to see, and just shows how shady of a company Megacorp truly is. The company Megacorp throughout basically the whole game has been shown to be a really dark, shady, a really greedy and evil company, and made the CEO seem really evil and wicked, which he was when Captain Quark was pretending to be the CEO. But at the end of the game, we see that the CEO is actually a really nice person. So all the things we saw about Megacorp being shady and greedy and evil makes no sense when you just look at the CEO of the company, and it makes a huge plot hole in the story of Ratchet and Clank 2. For my final thoughts on the game, I believe that Ratchet and Clank Going Commando is a masterpiece of a game. Whenever I think of some of the best games ever made, this game is usually held up there as one of the best games I've ever played and ever made, because of the core gameplay mechanics and the improvements Insomniac has made to this game since the first game. The game does still have its problems, like difficulty, a few glitches, and the unforgivable plot hole I talked about with the CEO of Megacorp. But all that being said though, that does not hold this game down by any means. This game is still an amazing game, and I would recommend it to any fans of the series and any person who wants to try out an amazing platformer game. Ratchet and Clank Going Commando definitely deserves to be played at least once. So yeah, that'll be my review for Ratchet and Clank Going Commando. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.